Hello and welcome back. And last time we were reading, we were hearing about the road agents or the thieves coming and holding up the stagecoach. And they were taking everything, and we know that they found a picture of Aunt Arabella inside of Praiseworthy's belongings, which many of you should be wondering, why would Praiseworthy have a picture of Aunt Arabella? Anyway, when the thief was going to take the picture, Praiseworthy lost his temper and punched the road agent or the thief and punched him so hard that they say that he flew uphill 15 feet. That's probably an exaggeration, but and Praiseworthy is saying, gosh, I had no idea I could hit so hard. And then he remembered that inside of his glove, which was on his hand, was all the gold dust, and gold is very heavy. So that's where we are right now. All right, with his fingers clenched around the gold, his fist had the kick of a mule. He picked up Aunt Arabella's picture and dusted it off. It seemed curious to Jack that he had brought it along. It made him feel strangely closer to Praiseworthy than ever before. "One more thing," said the gang leader. "All you gents, take off your coats and drop them in a pile." The guns came up again and left no room for argument. Jonas T. Fletcher peeled off his coat. Cut-Eye Higgins dropped his dusty linen coat. Regretfully, Praiseworthy added his fine black coat to the pile. He would miss it. Never met a person yet who didn't have gold pieces sewn up in the lining of his coat. You won't need coats in this heat, gents, so we'll just take 'em along. An instant later, the highwaymen spurred their horses and carried away their booty of watches, rings, buckskin gold pouches, and coats. Praiseworthy, unaccustomed to mere shirt sleeves, stood in the dust like a leopard, suddenly deprived of his spots. "Wait till the boys hear about this," said the undertaker. 15 feet uphill. Praiseworthy moved past him to step in front of Cut-Eye Higgins. "I'll thank you, sir, to hand over Dr. Buckbee's map." The dispirited villain reached for his dueling pistol, and Jack stopped in his tracks. Was Praiseworthy trying to get himself killed? "Don't bother to draw your gun," said the butler. "I was careful to notice that you never reloaded it. The map, sir. The map." The other man stared at him out of his scarred eye and then began to chuckle. But to Jack, it sounded as much like a growl as a chuckle. "You're a little late," said Cut-Eye Higgins. "Late?" "The map was sewn up in the lining of my coat." Uh-oh. And that is the end of the rogue outrogued. So Cut-Eye Higgins is saying that, yes, he had Dr. Buckbee's map, but he had it sewn up in the lining of his coat, and the highwaymen, the robbers, just took his coat. So away the map went. All right, and we're going to start the next chapter, which is called Jamocha Jack. It's chapter 11. See, there's a picture of a stagecoach. Jamocha Jack. All right, we're just going to read part of this chapter. The stagecoach climbed as if it were part mountain goat. It lurched, it halted, it bucked, it leaped, and it clung. At times, there was a sheer drop to one side of the trail. Far below, the pine trees looked to Jack like sharp green lances waiting to skewer them if they slipped. He only looked once in a while. They were almost at the diggings, he told himself. He'd been telling himself that for days. But at last, the stagecoach arrived, bringing a cloud of summer dust all the way from Sacramento City. "Hangtown, gents," the driver snapped. With a final crack of his whip, "Looks mighty quiet today. Don't see nobody standing under a pine limb with his boots off the ground." A dog greeted them at the end of the street and barked them all the way up to the Empire Hotel. The passengers got out. There was road dust in Jack's eyebrows, in his ears, and down his neck. Now that they had arrived, he had gold fever so bad that he didn't see how he could wait another 5 minutes to get his shovel in the ground. Hangtown! Everywhere he looked, there were men in jackboots and colored shirts. There wasn't a woman to be seen. The miners were coming and going, or standing and talking, or sitting and whittling. Blue freight wagons were being unloaded. Blindfolded mules were being loaded. The store shacks on both sides of the street were raised on wood pilings like short legs and looked as if they had just walked to town. Jack shouldered the shovel and Praiseworthy shouldered the pick. On the roof of the stage, the driver was throwing down trunks and hand luggage. "What's the best hotel in town?" asked Praiseworthy. "The Empire," answered the driver. What's the worst?" squinted Cut-Eye Higgins. "The Empire." Praiseworthy glanced at Jack. "Unless I miss my guess, there's only one hotel in town, the Empire." It was exactly 1 hour and 5 minutes before Jack saw the Btghs. First, Praiseworthy registered at the hotel. They washed. Immediately, Praiseworthy wrote a letter to Dr. Buckbee, advising him that Cut-Eye Higgins was in Hangtown, but that the map had fallen into the hands of a gang of highwaymen. "Can we go now?" said Jack, fidgeting. He had polished his horn spoon so much he could see his nose in it. "Go where?" "The Btghs." "Oh, the Btghs will still be there after lunch, Master Jack." Praiseworthy's patience was a marvel and an exasperation. They had come more than 15,000 miles, and now they had to stop to eat? Jack didn't care if they passed eating for a week, a month even. He wondered if he could ever grow up to be as easygoing as Praiseworthy. But once they sat down in the hotel restaurant, Jack discovered he was so hungry that he ordered bear steak. The only other item on the menu was sow belly and beans, and Jack figured you had to be starving to order that. "You and the boy want bread with your grub?" asked the waiter. He was a big fellow in floppy boots. "Why not?" said Praiseworthy. "It's $1 a slice." The butler slowly arched an eyebrow. $2 with butter on it." Praiseworthy peered at Jack, and then he smiled. "Oh, hang the cost. We're celebrating our arrival. Bread and butter, if you please." The bear steak was greasy and stringy, but something to write home about. Jack forced it down. After they left the restaurant, Praiseworthy bought a pair of buckskin pouches at the general merchandise store and emptied the gold dust out of his, do you remember where the gold dust has been? Yep, out of his glove. The index finger was springing a leak. Jack liked the new leather smell of the pouch. He tucked it under his belt next to his horn spoon and was beginning to feel like a miner. Then, with the tin wash basins under their arm and the pick and shovel across their shoulders, they set out for the Btghs. The day was hot and sweaty. When they reached running water, they saw miners crouched everywhere along the banks. So be sure you're picturing this and visualizing this. Remember that most of the time gold was found on the edge of a running river. So you'd have to go to the river and then you would start panning for gold in the water right there. So they're going to be looking for places next to a river. All right, so be sure you're picturing this. They were washing gold out of the dirt in everything from wooden bowls to frying pans. "Anybody digging here?" asked Praiseworthy. "Sure is. That's Buffalo John's claim." The butler and the boy moved on upstream. Here and there, miners were shoveling dirt into long wooden troughs set in running water to catch the flakes of gold. And you remember last week we were talking about different mining devices, and that was probably into a cradle or what would be called a long tom. "Anybody digging here?" asked Praiseworthy. "Yup, that's Jimmy from town's claim." On and on they went, looking for a place to dig. They passed miners in blue shirts and red shirts and checked shirts, and some in no shirts at all. Picks assaulted the earth and shovels flew. Weathered tents were staked to the hillsides. and the smell of boiling coffee drifted through the air. After they had walked 1.5 miles, Jack began to think they would never find a patch of ground that wasn't spoken for. Suddenly, a pistol cracked the mountain air. Praiseworthy's wash basin rang like a bell and leaped from his arm and went clattering away. "You there!" a voice behind him bellowed. Praiseworthy turned. His eyes narrowed slowly. "Are you talking to me, sir?" "Talking and shooting! What you doing with my washpan under your arm?" Jack stared at the man. He had a thick, tangled beard, and his ears bent over from the weight of his slouch hat. "Needless to say, you're mistaken," Praiseworthy answered. "Until this moment, I've had the good fortune never to set eyes on you or your washpan, sir." And we're going to stop there for the day. We will finish up this chapter tomorrow.